Hello. Today, for our candidate for Meet the Candidate, we have Miss Jacqui Berger. Jacqui is currently the assistant supervisor of the town of Amherst.
Deputy.
Deputy. I always get those titles mixed up. Okay, Jacqui, this starting part is the part you want to talk about your platform. So we'll give you, 3-4 minutes.
Okay. Well, I just want to introduce myself, though I think there are a good number of people who will be watching this that know me. I have spent my life as an advocate for people with disabilities. I am a certified special education teacher, though I haven't been doing that in a while. And I'm on the faculty of SUNY Empire State College. And one of the areas that I teach is disability studies. So I've been
That's very good to know.
I've been very active in the movement for a long time. I really got involved in the disability movement when my brother was learning disabled in the 60s when no one knew what to do with someone with a learning disability. And so I saw the problems he had, and I think that's how I naturally moved into teaching and being an advocate. And in college, I helped advocate for and then educate people on the original version of IDEA when it was 94-142. That means something to you, but not to most people.
For our viewers, that's the original number for IDEA. It used to be called the Education for All Handicapped Children's Act.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always done work relating to kids in education. I was often a problem for the people I worked with because I worked for the school districts, because I advocated for what people needed as opposed to what they wanted to give. And back then they didn't give much. So as time went on, I just continued to be an advocate. I continue to advocate now. I was just on an IEP meeting earlier this week as an advocate. I've traveled the state or called in to work with people because I think it's really important that people get what they need. And I also have done a lot of advocacy for adults. There are a number of self-advocates that I've worked with and helped over the years when they've run into challenges. But in general, I got elected to the town board and became was appointed deputy supervisor. And this seat became an open seat, and people saw this as an opportunity for me to take a lot of issues to the state level. So some of the issues that are really important to me that would matter in particular to this community is education, including special education, and people with disabilities. The current issues with services now are a challenge. There's lots of reasons it's a challenge, irrelevant of the budget cuts, and which we'll probably talk about a little later, or the budget holds, I should call them.
Right, we're about ready to do the questions. Are you ready for that?
Sure.
All right, so we're going to pull stuff right out of the speech. So the governor's talking about and is doing 20% withholds on services with state money. It's affecting all the services for people with disabilities. People are worried that the reduced amount of money is going to become the new baseline, the new normal. As a potential state senator, what do you say about that?
Well, I'm adamantly against it. One of the things I think they made a real mistake with saying we're making cuts across the board. Everybody's getting this 20% hold. You need to look at where it should be. And we also need to think about people. People should come first. And we should look at what the needs are. We don't want people to lose their housing. We don't want people to lose the services and supports that they need. That's critical for you to function in society, whether you're living at home, in a residential program. We need to look at all of that. And I do think there are places in the state budget where there can be more strategic reorganization and cuts than hurting individuals.
Right. Okay. So one of the other questions that that comes from our consumer base involves the reorganization of policing. People with disabilities have equal amount of concerns in terms of some of their interactions with police. And we know that moving forward, policing is going to be done in a different way. So I wanted to see if I could get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's an interesting question in terms of how to do it statewide. We've done a number of things in the town of Amherst where we've provided training and supports, disability awareness training, first responder training, so that people know some of what they're supposed to do. But what we really need to look at, instead of funding cuts, we need funding increases for police departments so they can have social workers and mental health workers available, sign language interpreters, foreign language interpreters as well. So that way, when the need happens, those miscommunications don't happen. People don't need to be shot or injured because there's a barrier. And when people are in a mental health crisis, there are lots of ways to deal with that, where you may need police support, but let someone else take the lead and decide when it's becoming too dangerous, and have the police out of sight or way far away in the background so that they're not front and center,
right,
upsetting someone even more.
Okay. I know that you've got interest in housing issues as well as education. So this next question kind of goes into a little bit about COVID, because we know that currently there's an eviction moratorium. Okay. And we know that budgets have changed a lot, especially for people with disabilities on fixed income, where costs have gone up in order to get things that they need for the pandemic, whether it's gloves, which are really hard to come by if somebody's living at home or living in a place where they need gloves, difficulty in getting food because going out is becoming more of a production. But eventually that prohibition is going to end. And there are going to be people that are going to be owing, I would think, substantial amounts of money. What would you want to do for the community when the moratorium on residential evictions lifts?
Well, ideally we need federal funding, but I'm not counting on that. I'm realistic. I mean, one thing is that when I sit down and talk to people and people know me, I'm realistic about what we can and can't do. So I'm not counting on anything from the federal government, because if we even get something, it may be too late. So one of the things the town of Amherst has done, which I would like to see more communities do, is we took some of our federal funding sources, some of our block grant money, some of our HUD money, and we're providing rent assistance to people who apply and show a need. And I think that could be done more widely in terms of looking at the resources you have and use that.
Are you aware that kind of Amherst has changed the parameters on that program to restrict it to students, foreign-born students, and punting people that have already applied to the county program that provides the same supports?
No, I did not realize that happened because I know we just discussed someone the other day where there was a concern. I know one of the things the town is doing is trying to maximize the supports. And so we may be, if the county has more money available, which as far as I know right now, the county does, and we have lots of students, particularly foreign students who were about to be homeless. So we needed to help them as well. So that may be what happened, but we need to look at those kinds of programs countywide, throughout the district, throughout the state, as well as towns and cities that can find the resources to do it. And it was a lot of creative work on the part of some town employees to find that money.
Absolutely. Last question, and this one's a simple one. What differentiates you from your opponent?
Well, my lifelong advocacy for people, particularly people with disabilities, and that I feel everyone has a right to live, participate, play, work in the community, and we need to create the spaces to do that and the supports. And that, I believe, is the responsibility of the state working with individuals.
Wonderful. I think this is great. I want to thank you for coming on behalf of the consumers of West New York Independent Living, and good luck in your campaign. I want to thank everybody for listening, and I'll see you with the next candidate.
Thank you.
Jillian, you can cut here.